right, we got Jimmy Haro. What did I just with? Oh, did I have the volume up? Oh, I had the volume. My fault. So we did against the Warriors.
See that? Right here. This isn't normal. Victor Wembanyama is standing near the three-point line and in one step manages to extend his arm like a selfie stick and pick the ball loose beyond the free throw line. This reach, from where his left foot is to where his right hand is about 9 feet, which means in just one step, Victor can cover this much space on the court. If I wasn't familiar with Wembanyama and his freakish length, I'd think the Spurs drafted an alien, and Victor is the exception. But standing right over here on the wing is another 7-foot 1-inch unicorn that has the tools to do things with his length that shouldn't be possible. In fact, it feels like these ultra-sized Swiss Army knives are becoming more and more common around the league. From oversized guards to point forwards,
Luka Doncic,
7-foot 4-inch big men calling for lobs at the three-point line. It feels like there's more size in the NBA today than ever before. Is the NBA getting bigger? Well, there's only one way to find out. Today's video is sponsored by was the very first in early 60s. This at Factor75.com. This is Walter Dukes. Walter was a solid NBA player throughout the 50s and early 60s. But what makes Walter special is that he was the very first 7-footer in the NBA when he was drafted in 1955. Basketball players have always been known for their stature, but when Walter was playing, he wasn't just considered tall, he was a one-of-one. A spectacle.
Because the average height in NBA back then was probably about like 5'11".
And the only 7-footer in the NBA until a talented prospect out of Philadelphia was drafted in 1959. Named Wilt Chamberlain.
Chamberlain was not drafted, bro. He was undrafted.
Season in 1960, 7-foot 3-inch Harvey Holbrook joined the NBA and would remain the tallest player in the history of the league up until 1982, when the Utah Jazz drafted 7-foot 4-inch Mark Eaton. 7-footers used to be extremely rare. Landing a player whose height began with a 7 used to mean winning the jackpot. But in today's NBA, 7-footers and positional supersized players have become so common that not having one can be detrimental. The future of the league and the sport itself is pointing in one very obvious, inevitable direction.
Okay, I ain't telling 7 feet tall.
And more length.
So bonus 7 feet tall. I know his dad's 7. I know his dad's taller than that. Then I know his dad was like 7'2", 7'3".
NBA getting taller.
Luka's not 7 feet tall.
Around the league seen an influx in size from combo guards to point forwards, all the way to
Melo's not 7 foot tall.
Demigods.
Giannis is 7 foot tall.
Between Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren just an anomaly in the NBA's timeline, or will players like this eventually become the new norm 20, 30 years from now? Well, here are the average heights across the NBA for each position 30 years ago in 1993. Here are those positions and measurements in 2003, and in 2013, and in 2023. And over the course of 3 decades, not much has changed. The traditional size standards throughout the NBA suggest point guards are usually about 6'2", shooting guards are about 6'5", small forwards are 6'7", power forwards are 6'9", and centers are about 6'11". And this generally remains the case to this day, although there are some small fluctuations around the edges. Point guards are nearly 2 inches taller today than they were in 1993, but centers are an inch shorter.
Yeah, because Muggsy Bogues in the league. Of course, you take Muggsy out the league, their height's gonna increase. Of course, you got dudes like Muggsy in the league.
Than they were in 1993. In 1993, the difference between a point guard and a center, on average, was nearly a foot. Today, that difference has shrunk to just 7 inches. In fact, this change, the homogenization of the league and the size of its players, is by design. When you chart size in the NBA, it comes out like this. A bell curve. Not a lot of small guys, not a whole lot of big guys, and a lot of guys in the middle. But if you compare the size data from the league in 2023 and the size data from the league in 1993, the evolution of the league and its players becomes a lot more.
And more 6'9" guys in 93.
These seasons, the average height of players across the league is exactly the same. 6 feet 6.7 inches. That would suggest that things really haven't changed over the last 30 years. But once you see how that size is distributed, you can get a better understanding of the evolution of the game. Size used to be almost evenly spread out. You've got your traditional point guards, your traditional rim protectors, you've got your wings and your slashers. They each had a distinct role on the court, and with a handful of exceptions, usually their size determined their role, for better or for worse. But in today's NBA, thanks to advanced analytics and better schemes and more data at the league's disposal, those roles and positions are becoming more and more obsolete. It's not the size that's changing, it's how we value and use size that's changing.
Because size used to dictate how their role that you play on the team.
23, the most common height in the league,
but now it don't matter.
6'5". And this range right here, the middle guys, the Swiss Army knives, makes up nearly 60% of all players.
Jamal Murray, 6'4", bro.
The most common height was 6'9".
Trae Young is 6'1".
Made up just 43%
that dude is shorter.
Of the league. The NBA
Trae Young is shorter than 6'1".
Where falling somewhere in the middle of size and skill set has almost become a valuable commodity. And the reason for this is actually very simple. Versatility. With the introduction of the 3-second rule in 2001 that forced big men to leave the paint on defense, and the three-point era that has brought offense further and further away from the rim, teams can no longer afford to have players on their roster with hyper-specific sizes and roles. Having guards smaller than 6'2" can leave a massive hole in your defense on the perimeter. Defensive schemes in today's league are designed to find the mismatch and exploit it. Players like Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, and Darius Garland are able to mitigate this liability with their offensive output, but the liability still remains. Having big
Donovan Mitchell, he's 6'1", but he has like a 6'10" wingspan, so he can get away.
Centers on your roster,
he can play some defense,
and
he's athletic. I don't know about Trae Young and Garland.
Outside of the paint, they too have become a nuisance on defense with screen-heavy offensive schemes and switches. The solution to this problem? Players who fall right in between those two extremes. Guys who are quick enough to defend the perimeter but have enough size to not fall into a mismatch with big men. LeBron James is the prototype for this kind of player, but since he entered the league in 2003, these attributes have become increasingly more common and valuable. The rule changes that took place in the late 90s and 2000s.
Jrue Holiday is 6'5"? Bro, he grew like an extra 2 inches or something? That dude is 30 years old and he's still growing? Dang!
Completely altered the makeup of rosters and have turned rosters
like
Jrue Holiday,
this, 6'5",
with a large variation of size and skills, into this, a roster that is made up of a bunch of all-in-one talents with a few specialty players around the edges. But those are just the defensive implications of having a one-size-fits-all roster in the NBA. On offense, this evolution is just as glaring. Since 2014, the NBA has been keeping track of advanced player data like speed, distance, individual time of possession. These statistics are called tracking data. And according to this data, here are the players who had the most touches per game in the NBA 10 years ago. And tell me if you notice a theme going on here. It's pretty obvious, right? Almost every player near the top of the leaderboard is small. Most of them 6'3" or shorter. And this is how
I need a point guard. The ball's gonna be in their hands. Of course they don't have the most touches. Whoop-de-doo!
How it's been since the
they initiate everything.
Game was created. Until recently.
Jimmy, what is going on with you?
Because here are the touches per game leaders from this past season. With only
I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jimmy. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jimmy. No, I forgot your game for a second. I forgot how you rolled for a second. I'm sorry.
In fact, in 2014, there were only 7 players out of the top 35 leaders who were at least 6'5". In 2023, 21 of the top 35 players were at least 6'5". Instead of putting the ball in the hands of the designated point guard or the guy who has the best handle, teams now are just letting their best player handle the ball most of the time.
Yeah.
It feels like guards have gotten bigger and taller because they have. Not because the league is getting taller, but because instead of letting the little guy handle the rock, they're just letting their best player handle the rock. And the best players tend to be bigger, or at least average in size. These guys used to have a specific role, but now that they've lost that role, thanks to new offensive schemes and tactics, their value has been minimized. Similar to defense, versatility has taken the place of specialized skill sets on offense. If you're really good, we'll just teach you how to handle the ball and run the offense.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if
Hey,
you're
look, that's what they did with Giannis. Yep, that's what they did with Giannis. Exactly what they did wrong. Hey, we'll just teach him. 6'11" long arms. We'll just teach you how to run an offense.
5 or 7 feet. The NBA isn't getting any bigger. It's getting more uniform. So where does that leave us with these guys? Will we inevitably see more 7-footers with the ability to bring the ball up the floor, protect the rim, and pull up from 25 feet? Probably not.
Jason Kidd made that dude a point guard.
The only reason why we didn't see players of this size with this skill set sooner wasn't because they didn't exist. It's because they weren't even allowed to do this stuff before.
Yep.
Check out this video of Shaquille O'Neal at practice in 1996. The skills were there, but putting a 7-foot 1-inch monster on the perimeter in the 90s would have been blasphemy.
Yep, they would have benched him immediately. Shaq wouldn't have been top players of all. He wouldn't have been top 75. He wouldn't be in the top 75. He did that in real game.
Clip of 7-foot Kevin Garnett handling on-ball pressure and using guard-like skills to get a bucket. If these two, as well as many other great bigs from the past, were given the green light to run an offense and handle the ball, they could have done it. And if Wemby and Chet were born 30 years sooner, they would have been relegated to the post like the players that came before them. But even with teams moving towards, even searching for players with guard-like skills, finding those big players with guard-like skills is still a tall task. Kristaps Porzingis came into the league as a 7-foot 3-inch wingman who fit well within the Kevin Durant archetype, could handle the ball and shoot it from outside, but over his career he has settled into a more traditional stretch big man role, where he has found vastly more success. Another example is Bol Bol.
To stay ahead.
Oh, Jimmy talks about AWS. I know he stopped there.
Who has all the physical tools to be like a Chet or a Wemby, and yet 4 years into his NBA career, and we have yet to see him shine in that role. We may not see more players with this particular blend of size and skill for a while. These guys are outliers. The goal here is size and shooting and switchability. If you can get super size with all of those skills,
Supersize me.
That's just icing on the cake. The versatility these types of players
Yeah,
provide
dunked on by Luka, bro.
least to the perception of these teams.
What's gonna happen next? Steph Curry's gonna dunk on you. Whoop-de-doo!
And their roles.
Imagine getting dunked on by Steph Curry. Don't even pick up a basketball anymore, buddy. Don't even look at it.
And switchability. And with this evolution came the extinction of most hyper-specific, highly
Imagine getting dunked on by Trey.
sizes and roles. And this data right here,
Oh my
they
goodness.
demonstrate this evolution better than anything else. It's a chart of every player in the NBA in the 1996-1997 season based
Trey
on
Young
height
dunk on you?
and weight. And as we touched on before, there was no shortage of variety in the league 25 years ago. Way down here is the smallest player in NBA history,
Muggsy!
5'3" Muggsy Bogues. Pretty confident in saying we'll never see another player like this in the NBA again.
Why not?
And on the complete
Damn, I weigh
opposite
more than
end of the
Muggsy.
spectrum is George Murison, the largest player in
I met him in
NBA
real life. But he don't look 7'7" in real life, though. I'll tell you that.
Some other
I met him in real life at a
outliers
basketball camp.
include Priest Lauderdale, a 7-foot 4-inch, 330-pound behemoth of a man. You also got 7-foot 6-inch Sean Bradley. Here's 7-foot 1-inch, 300-pound Shaquille O'Neal. But the majority of players in 1997 fell within this range of size, about 6'8", 6'9", 230 pounds. And now here is every player from the 2022-2023 NBA season. All those big enforcers that used to live in the paint have been drastically thinned out. The small guys are still around, but not nearly as much as they used to be. And in the place of those players are these players, who are somewhere in between big and small and can do a whole lot of both.
Medium,
The NBA
medium.
isn't getting bigger. It's actually getting more average. Oh, yeah. And here's Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. Two extraordinary outliers in a league that has become increasingly ordinary.
Shout out Jimmy.